everybody. I'm Kathy Klotz-Guest of Keeping It Human, and welcome to the newest episode of the Improv and Innovation Cafe. So glad to have you with us. I hope you enjoyed our other episodes, and I love your comments that you send me, your laughs, your giggles, your jokes, all that stuff. I like knowing what you want to hear about. This Google Hangout is really about answering how can improv and comedy and humor help with real business challenges. As I was joking with our guest earlier, nobody calls me and says, hey, my improv is broken, my comedy is broken. I wish I got those calls. I don't think that happens for most of us that do this kind of work. It's my marketing isn't working. Nobody is reading my blog, or I don't have good ideas for content marketing. So there's a real business challenge, and what I like to do is come at it from a how can comedy and humor and applied improv help with those real business challenges, rather than forcing my language as an improviser or comedian on my audience. But that doesn't mean we can't have fun. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today. It's Sarah Cooper. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Like me, she's a writer and a comedian. And unlike me, she's the creator of thecooperreview.com. And she takes a satirical look at culture and the lack of culture and everything in between. And she's very funny, and I really enjoy reading her blog. Like me, she comes from the corporate world, so she's been there, done that, seen it all. And I know that she used to be a user experience designer at Google, and she was one of the lead designers for Google Docs. So maybe if people have a lot of challenges or complaints, they can just kind of air it with you.
No.
I'm kidding. We can't blame Sarah. She's left, so it's not hers anymore, but not at all. But and with that, I'm so glad to have you. Welcome, Sarah, to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I met Sarah, actually, we were both speaking at Funny Business Conference in San Francisco in June, and she's a woman after my own heart. She's got a lot of great things to say. She's done a lot of really funny stuff on her blog. And I thought, who better to talk to than somebody who has done it and has a lot of great ideas on how to bring some of that lightheartedness and humor to an otherwise boring business blog. So I want to start off by asking you, Sarah, do you see any improvement? Are you seeing that people are kind of lightening up a little bit? Here we are with social media and transparency and authenticity and all these buzzwords, blah, blah, blah. But is that really translating to more humanness in writing and in blogs out there? Are you seeing that?
That's tough to say. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of polarization. There's like a very, very serious, people are very wary of humor. They seem to not have any sense of humor at all. And then there's that world. And then there's all the way on the other side where it's like, it's humor and it's really funny and it's great and you share it. And it's like, I think it's still really hard for people to meet somewhere in the middle where they're talking about something and learning about something and teaching people about something, but still having that sense of humor about it. I don't know what it is about the internet that makes people just get really fired up about things sometimes, but a lot of times you really have to say this is a joke for people to relax a little bit. It's kind of like the audience clapping track, where you have like the audience like laughing and clapping so that people know that they should laugh and they know that they should clap. It's like sometimes we kind of need that for the internet, I guess. But I think people are trying. They're definitely trying to do it.
And I think you're right. I think it has gotten a little bit better, at least in terms of, I think, Gen Xers and Gen Y folks that I'm talking to. They're much more open-minded to it. Mm-hmm. And I think there's sort of a tail end of the boomer generation that's a little bit open to it. But for the most part, I still see what you're talking about. I still see people where we're afraid of humor. We just think, oh my gosh, anything that just doesn't appear to be super serious, we can't trust. And it's so silly, but there is that mindset that, we're a serious brand, so therefore we can't be funny. Yeah. And to your point, it always makes me laugh that I have to, when I read blogs, that they have to preface it with, this is just satire. And I think, well, most of us would kind of know that, but you're right. There are people out there for whom we should have a sarcasm font because they don't know that. They wouldn't recognize it when they see it. And that to me is a little bit, it's a little shocking, but it's true.
It's very true. And I think that there's, like you said, that fear of what if people don't know it's a joke and do take it seriously? And then all of a sudden there's this huge backlash and the Twitter mob takes over and there's nothing you can do about it. Then you're issuing apologies. It's like there's a fear of that happening, I think.
That's true. Although, if I were to look at it, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but if I were to look at all the times that companies had to issue apologies for really bad things, I'd hazard a guess that humor was a small part of what the problem was.
Yeah.
It was somebody doing something stupid.
Yeah.
and not funny, but they weren't necessarily, it wasn't that they were trying to be funny and they it backfired. But
yeah,
I do think the risk of humor is actually less than people think it is.
Yeah, I think that people think it is a risk and they wish that there was some formula to be like, okay, 100% of people who read this will totally get it and I won't have to worry about anything. But I mean, sometimes it's just not that way. Everything is subjective. Even with something that's not funny, people might not get your point. You see articles being shared on Facebook all the time and people commenting have completely missed the point, or they didn't even read the article. They just read the headline and they're just commenting on what they feel about that subject. So that's going to happen anyway,
Oh, it's so true. And you can always tell those comments where you're like, if you're paragraph 3, I'm pretty sure the author answered that question.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think you're onto something. And I do think that it's still less of a risk than we think. And there is no formula. Anybody listening out there that thinks there's a formula, I got to tell you, there isn't one. Sarah, you know there isn't one. And a lot of times with humor, it's just about taking that risk, but it doesn't have to be an over-the-top risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are little things that, company blogs can do. But it's funny, I shook my head this morning and I went, is there a company blog that's out there that's truly funny? And I have to say that there are not as many as I would like to see. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you're reading out there that you go, that's an example of a corporate blog that has a legacy, it's a big brand, or it's a solid brand that's known, but you know what? They're not super serious all the time.
I would say MailChimp. I'm always impressed with MailChimp, and it goes all the way from their blog to all of their communication to even their help information is just got this kind of lighthearted tone, and I've always been super impressed with them. So definitely MailChimp, yeah.
I think MailChimp does a good job. I think HubSpot does a pretty good job on some of their stuff. Genuinely makes me laugh, and I think, wow, they've got that. And I think LinkedIn is starting to get some of that.
I've been told, not to post anything funny on LinkedIn. I've been told that that's not a place to be funny. And so I've been very wary of posting anything there. Other people will sort of post some things that I've done on there, but I have you heard that? Is that true? Or?
I've heard that, and here's what I did. I did it anyway.
Okay.
and because comedians aren't known for, sort of doing what authority says. True. So I just threw it up there just to see what would happen. And I wrote a piece on all the anatomy of a bad LinkedIn invite and all the messages that you get. And I wrote that and I equated it to bad pickup lines, like in a bar, bad business pickup lines. And that article actually did pretty well. And I got a lot of feedback on it. Cool. I think that there is a place for it if you can tie it into something that people actually care about.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
And I think, if you look at one of the top things on LinkedIn that people care about, one of the big things for content is employee engagement. Mm-hmm. And I think if you can write something really compelling that's also funny around employee engagement, I know that people will read it. I really believe that.
Interesting.
So I know that people say, don't be funny, but I don't know. I'm not sure I buy into that because I think if you've got a message, humor can really highlight and underscore the power of what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
It's really in the execution. Did you do it well? And did you tie it back to an issue that people actually really care about?
Yeah, I think that's the key. Because when people get to the end of whatever they've read and they feel like they've kind of gotten something out of it other than just an empty laugh, I think they're more likely to share it and appreciate it. That's very true.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you've read recently that you're like, wow, that sort of sets the bar for kind of business humor that you went, wow, I wish I thought of that?
Yes, I read an article, not even really an article, but I was on Medium, and it was a series of tweets from the CEO of Frito-Lay that were actually meant for the Google search bar. And I don't know if you saw that, but it's basically making fun of people who don't really understand technology, and this guy's a CEO, and the things that he's searching for, but he doesn't understand. He's actually tweeting these things. And it's just, it tells a very interesting story of what the mindset of the CEO, and it's just, it's hysterical. And I love it because it's kind of like a sort of, I love mockumentary. And so it's kind of in this mockumentary sort of feel of just, well, we found these tweets and, you know, look at what this guy is trying to figure out. And it's just hysterical. It
is funny. And I read that. And at first I wasn't sure if it was satire or not. And I thought, the CEO surely can't be, you know, what does fried mean? And he's entering these things into the search box. And it's very funny. You know, Sarah's right. If you haven't seen it, go Google it. Not now, after this Google Hangout. Yeah. But it's hysterical. And I remember thinking, that is just pure genius, because if it were real, it could have been so much worse. Considering what people search for in Google. You know, so I thought that is pretty funny. That's actually really, it made me laugh. And there were some funny ones in there. You know, what's fried? What does fried mean? Or what is a Frito? What exactly is a Frito?
How much salt is in it? How much salt is too much salt? How much salt is not enough, or something like that? It was just really funny. I like that one too, just because it makes fun of the medium as well. It's just it's sort of meta as well, because it's not like an article about something. It's their tweets, you know. So I just like that.
And what was really great too is it left a lot of us walking away going, was that real? Was that satire? Could a CEO of a large consumer company like Frito-Lay, could they not know the difference between the Twitter interface and Google search bar? You do not know. And then I thought, this is pure genius. What can I do with that?
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about techniques, because I think there's so much that there's so many easy ways people can do it, and I think people overthink it and they think, oh my gosh, humor, it's so scary. So I wanted this conversation to kind of break some of that down, because I think you and I both share a mindset that there are things that are accessible, and there are ways to weave humor in that can be easy and not so scary. And so I wanted to start by kind of talking about some of these different techniques. And, you know, one technique that you and I both spoke about at Funny Biz, which I'm passionate about, is sort of the mashup idea. Tell people about the mashup.
Well, in its most basic form, it's just taking something that maybe isn't that interesting and pairing it with something that is more exciting or more accessible to people. And that's just, I guess, one way of mashing things up. It could be two things that are just very opposite ends of the spectrum and don't seem to go together at all, and then making something new out of it. It's very postmodern, you know, it's very since there really is nothing new, let's take things that already exist and put them together to make something new out of that. I mentioned the Twitter account, but also the show At Midnight, where they actually do a lot of these sort of mashup games, where they ask you to make a movie fat, which is just weird. But then you have a lot of people writing in and turning movie titles into things that make them into about, obesity. So just random stuff like that. And the example that I used was, what if your coworkers were rappers? And it was something like, I wanted to complain about my coworkers, but I wanted to do it in an interesting way. So I kind of mashed up the two ideas and the names of rappers and kind of paired it with, the things that coworkers do that are just really annoying.
Yeah, I love it. No, it's such a great idea. In sketch comedy, we talk all the time about just going to places that are just, completely crazy, like, Burning Man and the Muppets. What would that look like? What would that road trip be?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And taking these things completely out of their normal context in order to change the conversation. So I'm a big fan of mashups, and I think that's such a great way. If you can find something that your brand or your product is really good at or known for, and just find something other than, that would be unexpected to pair it up with.
Yeah. And I think that's the tough part, is what is unexpected? Because oftentimes, when you're in the corporate world, you're just so focused on what you're doing. It's really hard to come up with something that's so out there. But so, a lot of times just, talking to your kid, like the random things that kids do is, just go completely outside of where you normally would think about things to come up with that thing that you can mash it up with.
Totally agreed. Totally dissimilar ideas, and that's where the really funny spark is. There was a really funny video. It's a few years old, but HubSpot did this thing that just cracked me up, and they were like, "Look, the hot thing today is auto tuning. So what if all your meetings were done in auto tune, and
cool.
you had to do it? You had to talk in auto tune." And I'm like, that would make meetings a hell of a lot more fun than they normally are.
Yeah.
And, those are just great ideas for just something, like he said, that makes you laugh or giggle, or something that's totally different, not even the realm of like country music. What does country music have to do with your product? I mean, and if you look long and hard enough, there's probably a way. I mean, what would a country musician, if they were explaining your product, what would that look like? If a child was explaining your product, like, what would that look like? Because that would be funny. Kids just they have no filter, and they have no patience for buzzwords.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Those kinds of things are just hysterical, because they'll say some pretty funny things. I did a video recently with a bunch of kids, and I asked them, what does cloud-based mean to you? And one little 4.5-year-old boy stood up proudly, and he goes, blah, blah, blah. That's what I hear. I could not have fed him that line.
Yeah,
because that was so authentic and perfect.
Yeah. That's great.
Totally.
And a lot of times, I mean, kids are so great just because it's kind of what you were thinking, and it's kind of how you feel, but they say it, it's just great.
They totally say it. Yeah. Have you seen any other good mashups out there?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. Let's see. Other good mashups. I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
No worries. It'll come to you. I'm just while we have you, it's like, what else is out there,
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about another technique. What's another technique that you use?
So another one is doing comparisons. That was another technique that I talked about, which is taking two things and just sort of putting them in a situation, and then like saying, well, how would the situation be if you were over here versus over here? And this worked really well for a piece I did on comparing living in San Francisco to living in New York. And just taking situations like brunch or going out on the street or staying out late or partying or whatever it is, and saying what that would be like in New York versus San Francisco. And I think that the thing that works about this is that people will get on one side. And if you pick two things that people are like, yeah, no, I'm San Francisco or I'm really New York, and people do really feel very strongly about those two cities.
They do.
So it worked pretty well. If you do that, it almost it almost doesn't have to be that funny. It can just be more observational, and then people will want to talk about it and share it and kind of argue about these different things. And you'll see this a lot too with BuzzFeed does a lot of these videos where they're like, things now versus how they were 20 years ago, or like, if you're a boy or a girl, getting ready if you're a boy or getting ready if you're a girl, things like that. And they do really, really well. And they're not even that funny. They're just observational. They're just telling you exactly how things are in these two different situations. Yeah.
No, you're right. And BuzzFeed's really good at that. They've produced some really interesting content that really makes me laugh. And their headlines, the thing that I think I love too about them is that their headlines are pretty great.
Yeah, their headlines are awesome. I don't know how they do it.
Well, you know what? Somebody told me who worked at BuzzFeed said that they generate probably about 20 different titles. Okay. And then they vote and go, all right, which one do we think is the best, that not just is clickbait, but actually represents truly what's in the article. And so they will generate tons of stuff before they pick on one, and that's labor intensive. And I think that's one of the reasons why they do so well. But then they store those other titles, and they have other titles that they can think about later.
Yeah, I think that's tough when it's just for my blog. It's just me, so it's kind of hard for me to be like A/B testing all those different things. But I think we can look to what they actually end up using and kind of learn from that.
Yeah, no, I think it's true. And I love your drawings. I'm not the world's best, artist. I'm not. I'm a storyteller, but that's what I love about it. And I think a lot of times people think that to do cartoons that they have to be, great artists, and I will always say to people, gosh, because you've got some really funny stuff, and it's really not, I think, the quality of the drawing, it's really the punchline. Do you have something to say?
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to say to people, don't let, if you're concerned about the quality of your drawing, keep you back. Just create some funny PowerPoint slides. I mean, there's so many funny things you can do with just stick figures or PowerPoints, know, and that's okay if the point that you're making is pretty funny. It's not going to matter that it wasn't, professionally done by an artist.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I've noticed that some of the best artwork that I see is really great, but they're not saying anything. I mean, that's art, and you can really appreciate it, and it's brilliant. I'm not an artist. I don't know. I didn't go to art school, and so it's really more about my message. And so I don't start with the art. I don't start there. I start in Google Docs. I start writing down what I want to say, and then the images sort of come from that. And I think that that's a good, if you have something to say and you're not an artist, start with a message, because like you said, people are going to read. They're going to read those things, and then hopefully the imagery just gives them those light posts to kind of like stop and look and kind of get the message even better. And it's not about, hey, I'm sharing this because this art is so good. I'm sharing it because I got it, and it made me laugh, or it made me think, or whatever it is.
And that's a great point. I love that you just pound things out in Google Docs and get the ideas, and then the visual comes to you. And that's usually how I work too. And then, even if it's really a crude visual, that's okay. It's very rudimentary, done in PowerPoint, that's fine. Yeah. But I find that it helps me then use a lot more funny visuals in so visual storytelling. And that's the other thing is, it's your blog today doesn't have to be just words. It's, just these images that are very funny. That itself is, an image is worth 1,000 words, as we all know. People are going to look at the images, and I think that's where people have a chance to really do some funny stuff too, is the images.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it kind of, sometimes it takes a while to find out like what's really funny about this, or what's really like honest about this. And so starting in Google Docs and getting your ideas out, and then maybe your first idea for what a visual would change after you've thought it out and written it out and thought about it some more. Then you'd come up with something that actually is more of a punchline and takes what you've written even further. That's how I've kind of noticed when I'm working on my blog. Like it might even take me a day or like just sleeping on it before I actually message of what I'm trying to say and really fit.
Yeah. And that's a really good point.
It doesn't happen automatically. It takes some time. Yeah, I think you're right. I think for me, it's really honing the message, because the caption and the visual then will just, flow out of that. And it's really, what am I trying to say? And one of the things that's really interesting to me is, when I do talk to cartoonists, people that do draw for a living and they're really good at it, it's the same thing. Whether you're good at drawing or not good at drawing, it's always the same thing. It's, Kathy, look, I hone my message. I think about my message as a caption. It's a cartoon caption. Then once I've got that message, everything else flows around that. But if you can think about your soundbite, or the main point you want to say is just a caption, that will help you really crystallize what you're trying to say, and then the image that flows from that. Yeah, that's something that's helped me. I mean, we're all overloaded, and when we create tons of content that people don't read, just because we got to create content that doesn't help anybody. So less is more. Funny, more human, more visual. That's what I'm trying to do. So let's talk about some other techniques, because I know there's tons of stuff. I want to give people options. Some of these things, I always like to say, give people options. Some of these things won't resonate with everybody, but that's okay. Pick one or two things that Sarah and I talk about today that resonate with you. And if you just do one thing differently right away, you'll get results. So you don't have to do all of the things that we're talking about. I really believe in just pick the one that works for you. So what's another technique? Mashups and comparisons, those are great ones. So another one was making fun of yourself, which, self-deprecating humor, I think always works pretty well. And I think in a business setting, people always have something that, they can complain about, always something that they can complain about, or something that isn't perfect. And so as a brand or as a business, you can your customers, or like, this isn't being done very well, in the industry right now, or whatever it is. So just taking that and sort of, making fun of yourself a little bit and having a sense of humor about yourself, I think is also just lets people relate to you and realize, hey, this is, something that I can relate to. And the example that I use for my blog is just, I hated going to the gym and I just spend so much money on the gym. And so you end up in this situation where you have paid to go to the gym, but you don't want to go, but you paid for it. So you feel like you have to go. So how do you go and still feel like you went, even though you didn't actually exercise or do anything that was, broke a sweat or anything like that. So that was just something that I did. And you might see a lot of these things, you'll actually see them now. Like when you look at content, you'll see how people are kind of using this stuff. And I think this is something that works really well.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And I laugh because I've seen people, I have friends that like, they'll just go from machine to machine talking to people with their sweatbands. And I'm like, you haven't done anything. You're just talking. They're like, woo, and it is pretty funny. And I think that's a great point. Self-deprecation is a good one. And I think a lot of brands are hesitant to do that. And they shouldn't be. I think there's reasons for doing it. And I think the bigger the brand, I think the more scared they are of laughing at themselves sometimes.
Yeah, because they don't want to be put in a situation where it's like, oh, you're actually admitting fault or admitting that you're not good at something. So it can be a little bit tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely can. And I think there's times, I think self-deprecation is a great thing because I think the hallmark of a great brand is to be imperfect, to be human. So I think it's great. But I think there are times where if you've got, if you're, I shouldn't name a brand that has service issues that has to do with cable and internet, but I'm thinking of that brand and I'm not going to say it.
You don't have to say it.
I don't have to say it. Plus, I think all of a sudden, like Big Brother, everything will stop. This cast will be over. But I think, when you've got a problem that people perceive as real, a customer service issue, I think when you do use self-deprecating humor, what I've seen is that it can backfire a little bit if you haven't solved the problem. People think that you're trivializing their issues. But if you have a great reputation and you have a solid product, self-deprecation is awesome because that if you're confident in your product and you've got great reviews and great service, a little self-deprecation you can afford to have.
Mm-hmm.
I think it only really matters when, you as a brand really are hurting, and now's not the time when you, to be, self-deprecating when you haven't fixed the problem. So I think you're right. I think more brands could spend a little bit of time having a little fun at their own expense. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think, agencies do this. I feel like there was something where last year where an agency was just making fun of the whole agency culture, and it was their new office and they had like hardwood floors and places where people could sit, and they spared no expense with this agency, office. And it's just making fun of this idea that, your office is going to be the thing that makes you like the best in the world or something like that. Which is just really funny. And it almost makes them seem more intelligent because they realize how ridiculous that is, and they can make fun of it. So
no, well said. I think, and there was a video last year that I thought was hilarious, and I am just blanking on the name of the creator of the video, but it was an agency and they were making fun of branding agencies that, talk in buzzwords, never really say anything. Like we're all, we show a picture of people and earth, and we talk about how we care about the environment. We care about this and that and the other thing, and sustainable this and sustainable that, but we never actually say who we are, what we believe, and what we do. Mm-hmm. And it was all these, just very comical buzzwords. And by the end of the video, it was like pretty much a lot of the big agencies were being parodied. And I thought that was brilliant because I think it's a great way to say to the world, hey, we're different. We get it. This is how we're perceived. A lot of, and part of it's our fault. We as agencies haven't done a good job being human. So we get that this is how you see us.
Yeah, exactly. And to your earlier point, you have to have solved that and fixed it and not be that if you're going to actually, put yourself out there like that. And so if you are like truly human and truly, authentic, then yes, you can go ahead and make fun of this culture that has, sprung up.
Oh, for sure. It'd be nice if we saw more brands do that, be a little self-deprecating, and I think that would go a long way. I know for some brands out there. But,
yeah, I was just talking with someone yesterday about the videos that startups make to show their product and how similar they all are. Like the sweeping views of the desktop, and like there's always someone on a bike and they stop and then they they pull out their phone and then they pull up the app. It's almost the same tropes and everything, and
it is
just like that's just ripe for just making fun of that and just breaking it apart. And that's at some point that's what's going to set you apart, is just making fun of that and doing something completely different.
No, it's so hilarious. I think you're right, because I've seen some of those and I'm like, it's the same sort of Gen Y
and I can't watch them anymore because it's just like I know how this ends. It ends with you telling me to download your app,
Exactly. or it's the same message that I see so many companies now with, we're humanizing and it's like people. It's all about people. People this, people that. We have pictures of people. We're people. People make people sin on our and this guy, and that's how we're human, because we care about people. And like they've never told you how or why, or just it's just pictures of people, and it's not even diverse people. It's like it looks like the founder's friends, and you're like I see enough of this stuff that makes me sometimes go, oh my God, This is a great trope for making fun of.
Right. Yeah.
You got to do a lot more than just show pictures of people on your website to say that you care about people. That's like, that's low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah. Not everyone's going to be buying it.
No, not at all. Not at all. So that's a great suggestion. Are there any other suggestions that you can think of?
So I think the last one was, and this just goes through all of them, is just honesty. And a lot of times, the best comedians are the ones that are just saying the things that we don't have the guts to say, or too shy to say, or whatever it is. And Louis C.K. is one of my favorite comedians. And if you listen to anything he says, he's literally just telling you what's already happening in the world and what we're already doing and what we're already thinking. And it's hysterical. And there's nothing about him that is trying to be funny. Everything about him is just trying to be as honest as possible. And so I think that's where people trip up a little bit with trying to be funny, because if it's so obvious that you're trying to be funny, it's not going to be funny at all. It's actually, it's going to be very awkward and uncomfortable. But I might be the only one here, but the Delta, their new video for, letting people know about the safety features of the airplane, where they used all of the YouTube stars in it. I just thought it just was so obvious what they were trying to do and who they were trying to pander to, that it just wasn't interesting to me at all. And so that's the kind of thing where, like, if it's, I hope that people don't come away from this and be like, okay, we need to like get a committee together and it's going to be our funny committee, and they're going to like try to come up with funny things, because that will lead to a bad place probably. If you just start with what are people actually saying, what are we actually feeling, what's really going on, just as dumb and as obvious as you can be. Like sometimes the most obvious things are just the most hysterical, and you think, well, this isn't funny, but then people will look at it and be like, yes, that's me, or that's my friend, or that's someone else. And it will really, it will really resonate with people. And I think that's the most successful kind of humor.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's the famous book, an adage, truth in comedy. And that's really what it is. It's such a great point, Go for the truth. And I laugh when you say funny committee, because, oh my God. If you're putting together a funny committee, anybody out there thinking about it, don't, because I guarantee you that's an oxymoron. There is no funny committee. It does not happen.
Yeah. Although that would be a funny video to make fun of a funny committee. That would be hysterical.
That's hysterical. Because once you get a committee together, there's no funny. It's kind of like I had many years ago, I worked for a company that used to always, we'd have morale problems, and let's have a fun get together. It's a company mandated fun time. And it's like, okay, you do realize that the minute you say it's company mandated fun time, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be. It's just not. It's a company event. Everyone's expected to be there. I got news for you. You pretty much put the FU in fun, because it's not going to be fun. You calling it fun has therefore made it unfun.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happened. I think it's your point is so great. That's such an important point. I think people try too hard, and I think as comedians, I think you and I are wired for that. And the one thing I always say is really honestly make fun of the situation. Just a situation that's so relatable. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying too hard to be authentic, it comes across so cheesy and inauthentic that that stuff drives me nuts. And it's very noticeable. And get rid of your funny committee. Let your funny employees, the ones who really are great storytellers, let them tell their version of what it's like to work for a company their way. But don't tell them how to be funny.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because chances are, if you're telling somebody how to be funny, it's probably not going to be funny.
Yeah. And stories are a great place to start. I mean, in improv, like with the monologist at like Ask Cat, I have seen, monologists tell things and they're trying to be funny. They're not realizing that the point is not for them to be funny. It's just to like give as many details as possible and just tell a very true, honest story so that the improv group can make something out of it that will, eventually, hopefully make people laugh. But it's so true. Like, your employees who have these great stories that, if you're trying to mine that content from there, it's really not about asking them, tell me a funny story. No, just tell me something that pissed you off, or tell me something that like really surprised you. It's more about that, and the humor will come. Don't try to force it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. And it's a lesson that, in all the years I've been doing improv, it took me a couple of years to really get that. It's just let go, tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because the truth is funny. You can't make some stuff up. Some of it is just so funny. You cannot make it up.
Yeah.
I could not have fed that kid a line like that. He just was like, that's what it was for him. And he just blurted out his truth. And that was so brilliant,
Yeah. And even, for me in improv as well, it's still, I still fall into the trap of, what would make this funny? And like, anytime I follow that, it's terrible, just terrible.
It is, and it takes that couple years to get that to purge that out of your system. And you never 100% get there, but you can get better. And it's you just going for the reality of the scene, or going for the reality of what your customers are dealing with, versus trying to be funny. And there's a great video that proves this point. Years ago, this editing bureau called Schofield Edit did this really funny video, Sarah, and it was hysterical because all they did was tell the truth about small businesses and all the small businesses that they dealt with, their customers, what their pains were. So, for example, when you start a small business, sometimes you attract customers that don't want to pay for your services. So the whole video was like, the hairstylist, cutting the hair, and the woman goes, can I take this for like a week spin and pay you if I like it later?
Yeah.
So wait, you're not going to pay me? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the video. It sounds like you have. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant because it just was about real situations that small businesses find themselves in.
Yeah, and it's just the ridiculous nature of what if we treated services like that. Yeah, I love that.
Totally. and heighten that thing and take it over the top. So whatever the truth is, I always like to say that, it's a way to just take that truth and heighten and exaggerate and build it over the top so people will see the truth in it, but the truth reflected at sort of lightning speed is very funny.
That's very true.
Yeah. So anything else, Sarah? What else you got?
Well, I think that's about it. So,
and there's variations of all these things.
Yeah, there's variations of all of them. I mean, one more that I think kind of worked well was I did a piece called "How to Share Your Personal Opinions on Facebook," which nobody should actually share their personal opinions on Facebook. And it's really like a step-by-step that isn't a step-by-step. It's not a how-to at all. It's really just open up Facebook and immediately get pissed off. You know, step 2, like realize it was a family member who said that. Like step 3, pace around the room and wonder what to say, you know? So that's, again, like just, this is what happens. This is what people go through, and just kind of like stepping through that. So that's just another example.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, and it's true. And that's very funny, because I feel like, you know, holidays at my house growing up prepared me well for the onslaught of haters on Facebook. It's just like dinner at my house. So it's like, you know, the people that just, you know, that randomly give their opinions, and then you know, yell at each other and get mad at each other. But so there's a lot of really great stuff that we talked about. And then there's status and things like that in the improv, as we've talked about before, that you can play with and heighten. And so there's a lot of different things. You know, mashups, there's comparisons, there's self-deprecation, which I think is great. The truth is funny. Just, you know, talking about the everyday reality of what you deal with. And, you know, don't go for the comedy, but really go for the truth in it all, and take that to an exaggerated place. But those are great tools. And again, if just one of those things, you know, touches you or speaks to you, my philosophy is great. Start there. You don't have to use all 4 or 5 things just to get some bang for your buck. And I think the world would be a better place if people just use one of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. What are you doing next? And do you have any special projects? Anything you want to tell the audience about, Sarah?
Yeah. So one of my most popular article was 10 Tricks to Appear Smart in Meetings. And check out my website. It's thecooperreview.com. And I will actually be writing a book. It will be 100 Tricks to Appear Smart in Meetings, and it will be coming out next fall.
Nice.
So I'm really excited about that. And if you go to my website, you'll see a link to sign up for my newsletter. So sign up, and so I can keep you up to date. I post new comics and articles on my site every week. So if you sign up, I can kind of, you know, keep you updated on all that stuff. And I also do things like this with Kathy, where I talk about, you know, how to add humor to what you're doing. And I hope to be speaking at, you know, some conferences again around, you know, for the next year or so. So those are a few things that are going on.
Just a few small things. Nothing, you know,
nothing big.
Nothing big, nothing huge like a book or anything. If you haven't, you should check it out. It's very funny. And I actually read your article, and it just cracked me up. And just to give people a taste of it, you know, Sarah's very funny. And there is always the guy that's like, hey, let's step back.
Let's take a step back.
Let's take a step back. There's always that guy.
Yeah.
And there's always that archetype in a meeting, always. And it's like, I'm not really thinking of anything. I just got my poker face on, but people think I'm smart.
Yeah.
And it's hysterical, and it's true. And there's one of those in every meeting. There's the Muller. There's the people that disappear and then come back when the project's almost done or the meeting's done.
Yeah.
Oh, and it just...
The guy who goes up and puts something on the whiteboard that makes no sense.
You know, I think that's what women are missing. I think men are ahead of the game in terms of these archetypes, meeting archetypes. Women have to sort of play catch up. We need more of the female archetypes that pop in there. But it is very funny, so I do encourage you to check it out. And you can check out my stuff at keepingithuman.com. And I've got a book on storytelling that I am co-authoring, and it looks like it's going to be late fall at this point, but stay tuned for updates at keepingithuman.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kathy Klotz-Guest, no hyphen, because it's clever. It's just my name with no hyphen. There you go. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. There's some great tips, and my hope is, as always, is that, you know, people just take one thing and make a difference, and you'll see a difference in your world. Yeah, this was great. I had a lot of fun. You told me to have fun, and I did. Good. Well, that's the most important thing. It's like, you know, I'll tell you this. My final thought for today. I remember when I was first starting improv. Everybody was so hung up on having a good show. Yeah. Have a good show. Have a good show. And the best advice I ever got from somebody at Improv Olympic was, no, have fun. You try to force the funny. That's exactly what we talked about today. It's a train wreck waiting to happen because you're trying too hard. Just listen to each other, make each other look good, have fun, And that's it. And you'll see the difference. And boy, was he right, because the difference in fun that I was having and the difference in the quality outcomes of the show were night and day. And it was just let go and have fun. So everybody out there, let go and have some fun.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.